Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I have this article, and the reason why I'm showing this article because this is a really popular phrase out of a Bible and out of the Bible scriptures, and so in the as pertaining to the Black community who goes to church and who proclaims Christianity and religion, a lot of the reason why most Black women will be submissive to males is because of the religions that they hold to, which I'll be honest with you, and I'm going to put what my opinion is in there based on also real life experience of what I've seen, the culture of, you know, Black people here in the United States. Um, those Black people who go to church regular, they use religion to pretty much as a guide for relationships. And this is a really popular phrase, but at what expense do people use this? And this is what happens to women who they use the Bible and they use their religion and they go to church and they follow what the tradition is to submit to your husband. And the women are told to endure domestic violence, to endure the abuse. It's more your fault, not his fault. What did you say to him to make him angry? And so that's the reason why you have some Black women who they think it's okay for the male to be abusive because that's just something that is a part of the relationship, and you have to do better to please this male and to be more subservient and submissive. And so there's some women who they perpetuate this, and a lot of times people come from homes where they see this type of abuse between their parents, and so then when they then become older, they get in relationships and they do the same thing that they grew up seeing in their household, abusing women and men mistreating women, but it's looked at as a normal thing. It's something that you're supposed to deal with. You're supposed to not talk about it, not be upset about it, and you're supposed to just deal with it because that's a part of religion. And I think that's the reason why a lot of this has gotten out of control, and some of it where you don't get involved in it. And some women just are used to being in abusive relationships because they have a fear of being alone. They think that something's wrong with her if she's by herself, and people are, it's more about, looks and outward appearances and, material items. And if you don't have a lot of money and material items, you got to have a man because something's wrong with you if you don't have a man. And so, it's about how people look at you and how they shun you from society. It must be something wrong with you if you don't have a man. And so people get into this, and that's the reason why some women will accept males even if they don't have a job, they're not working, they don't really want to help you with your kids that may be their kids, but they don't really want to support you and support the children. They just kind of want a place to stay and lay up on you and do whatever it is that they want to do. And then they can get very violent with you, but you're supposed to accept it because that's what the Lord says to do. That's what God says to do. Women are supposed to be submissive, submit to your husbands. And so this article that is here, it pretty much points out a lot of these beliefs. It says, submit to your husbands, women told to endure domestic violence in the name of God, because people are saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Spirit. And, every Sunday they're going to church religiously, but Monday through Saturday, you get those black eyes and you get bruises and broken arms and maybe a broken leg or a hip or a busted jaw, but you got to submit to your husband no matter what. So research shows that the men most likely to abuse their wives are evangelical Christians who attend church sporadically. They don't attend regularly, but it's okay to go whenever you feel like it, because you still have the Lord up in you, and you have to, do what the church is telling you to do. And you have to submit to these men and submit to your husbands and submit to the church leaders as well. So the church leaders, this is right here talking about Australia. They say they abhor abuse of any kind. But advocates say that the church is not just failing to sufficiently address domestic violence, it is both enabling and concealing it. And so this article was updated January of 2018. So I guess it was recently they went through this article. And so it's by a Julia Baird and a Haley Gleason. And so even these black religions, the religions where they come up with all these, beliefs that the men are superior and men are supposed to lead. They're the breadwinner. They're supposed to take care of their families and this, that, and the other. That sounds good on the surface, but behind closed doors, he's violent. He's a predator. He's vicious, and he'll kick your teeth out of your mouth. You're there to just be a receptacle so you can get pregnant and have the babies, but he's not going to help you with them. You got to clean the house. Basically, you're a sex slave. But there's a contract. There's a piece of paper saying that he is yours and you're his property. And so he's the leader and you're supposed to follow him. It's not like a loving relationship. It's more like, he's got his own little slave and whatever else. So 22 wives, be subject to your husbands as you are to the Lord. I guess verse 22, wives, be subject to your husbands as you are to the Lord. So this is the second installment of an ABC News 7:30 investigation into domestic violence and religion, how it coincides. So you can read part 1 of the series. So the culprits were obvious. It was a menopause or the devil. Either menopause did it or the devil. And so it says that who else could be the blame? Peter screamed at his wife in the night. Tirades and her alleged insubordination for her stupidity, her lack of sexual pliability, and her refusal to join him on the tornado ride at a Queens Island water park, and her annoying friendship with a woman he called Rat Face. And so for her sheer complete failure as a woman. So she wasn't the woman that he desired. He just went on a tirade about this woman. So the abuse went on day and night as Sally bore a child, worked morning shifts at the local hospital, and stayed up late pumping breast milk for the baby. She was deeply exhausted, depleted, and worn out. And the night before Sally finally left her husband and the townhouse, at the townhouse they lived in on Sydney Northern Beaches, he told her that she was also failing in her spiritual duties. So a lot of times what happens, they use the religion because they know that's part of your tradition or your family makeup, and they use the religion to make you feel guilty that you're not following the Lord's wishes. And so it goes on to say that your problem is you won't obey me. You hear that? You won't obey me. So the Bible says that you must obey me, and you refuse to do so, he yelled. You are a failure as a wife, as a Christian, and as a mother, and you are an insubordinate piece of shit. And so this is the way some men will talk to these women, and the women, they feel low, they feel depressed, they feel like it's all of their fault. Anything goes wrong, it's the woman's fault. So Sally, an executive assistant who had just turned 44, stared at him, worrying at whether her neighbors or her sleeping daughter could hear the roars through the thin walls. And so she knew that what had what had flicked his switch. The simple act of coming down to say goodnight, which he interpreted as a lack of willingness to have sex. So Peter then opened his Bible and read out the verses. Wives, submit to your own husbands as the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. And so his body and is himself its savior. Okay, so that's out of Ephesians 5:22, verse 23. Next, let a woman learn in silence with all submissiveness. I permit no woman to teach or have authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain silent. 1 Timothy 2nd, 11, verses 11 through 12. So for years, Sally had believed that God wanted her to submit to her husband, and she did her best, bending to his will and working to pay the bills despite the pain she was in. But on this night, she was done. The next morning, she packed up her bags and grabbed her clothes and her daughter and left, taking the little girl with her in hand. So she left everything else behind: religion and domestic violence, the missing link. So when we speak of domestic violence, the cultural factors that foment it, one crucial element missing from the discussion has been religion. So while it is generally agreed that equality between the sexes can foster and cultivate environments where men seek to control or abuse women, in Australia in particular, there has been a very little public debate about this that might impact people in male-led congregations and religious communities, because in Australia, they happen to have men leading everything because they're very, I would say, patrial in that community. So especially those, and then there's certain racial groups that are very patrial, or they believe that's what their whole tradition was led up on, is patrial or patriarchy led households. And so it's one thing to have the male lead the house. If he's positive, he's working, he cares about his children, he cares about his wife, that is nothing wrong with that. And if he's really doing the right things, he's not abusive. But we're talking about males who use the Bible and they use these traditions and they use this as a way to be abusive, because they know they have that privilege, because it says that the women are supposed to submit to males, and they use the religion as a bridge way so that they can commit their violence on women. And so this is what this is all about. And so some people have done this, and they switch it around and use the Bible to help them commit these crimes within their families. And so this might impact people in male-led congregations, religious communities, especially those where women are told to be silent, and it happens in the Black community a lot, and submit to the male authority. And so we saw that at Aretha Franklin's funeral when Reverend Jasper Williams, I believe is his name, he says that no Black woman can raise Black boys. And so, but the men can have sex with the women and leave her with the kids, but it's the woman's fault because no Black woman can raise the Black boys. But he doesn't make mention of why those Black men make the babies and then leave the woman and abandon her with the kids, because he's out busy making other Black women pregnant and leaving them with kids too. So he didn't mention that. So in other countries like the United States and the UK, which is the United Kingdom, there's been an extensive analysis. And so why is Australia so behind on this issue? Okay. In the past couple of years, concerns has grown amongst those working with survivors of domestic violence about the role the Christian church of all denominations can either consciously or inadvertently play in allowing abusive men to continue abusing their wives. This also happens in the Latino community as well, because it's very patrial in terms of patriarchy, because the men are supposed to lead, and they're heavily deep off in traditions of male-led families. Um, so do perpetrators ever claim church teachings on male control excuse their abuse or tell victims they must stay? Okay, so why have there been so many few sermons on domestic violence? Because the woman is supposed to submit. They don't want to hear about what the males have done. Males are not supposed to be held accountable for their wrongdoings. Only women. Women are always the problem, not the religion. You know, that's the reason why they never do sermons about that, because there's no such thing as men doing anything wrong. It's women. They didn't do enough to please their husband, so they're supposed to submit. So that's what happens in the Black culture, because you got to do everything that you can to make the men please. And if you didn't, then it was something wrong with you. Not his responsibility. He can just make you get pregnant and have to run around and like your head is cut off like a chicken, and you're trying to figure out how to support the family because he's out making other Black women pregnant. So that's okay. You know, and religion, you got to follow that to the T, even though you got shyster preachers and reverends that tell you that it's your fault. They reiterate that stuff and tell you it's your fault that the kids grow up bad because the father's out of the home, but they don't mention that the father, he's a rolling stone, and that he's rolling around with other women in the haystack, making them pregnant. And then he keeps giving those diseases out because it's the gift that keeps on giving. So why do so many women report that their ministers tell them to stay in violent marriages? I guess I basically pretty much sum that up. So is the stigma surrounding divorce still too great and unforgiving? And is this also a problem for the men who are abused by their wives? Oh, wow. Men being abused. Okay. You know, but that does happen. Now, let's not make that seem like it isn't true, because there are some flip sides to the story, of course. But here's the thing. Women there's some women that are accepting of this abuse, and then women who aren't accepting, they get bashed by women who accept the abuse. So let's talk about that as well, because we can't just blame just the males. We have to get on the females that think this is okay. And so women who speak out about abuse and being abused, they're bashed by women who say that's what a woman's supposed to deal with. You know, so I'm saying something about that as well, because that is also going on, and it's very prevalent also in the Black community. I feel that's the reason why the abuse continues even more, because some women say, well, you know, your father, you know, I had to deal with that with your father, and we're still together. And almost both of her eyes are popped out of her head because of being beaten them. So, and if the church is meant to be a place for a refuge for the vulnerable, why is it that the victims are the ones who leave churches while the perpetrators still remain? Exactly. Really important questions to wonder about. So is it true, as one Anglican bishop has claimed, it says that there are striking similarities to church failure to protect children from abuse? Because we have that in the Catholic Church, and Latino people should be speaking out on that. And there are some that are talking about how they've been abused in some of these Catholic churches by these popes. And they've been told about how homosexual is something wrong with them. But what's happening in these Catholic churches to these men, you know, that's okay. Nobody's supposed to speak on that. Nobody's supposed to fight back about that and be disgruntled about that. But you're supposed to bash people because they actually are open about who they are. And they want to actually be in a real relationship and admit to who they are, instead of be sexually oppressed and become nuns and popes and hide their sexuality, and then force young little boys against their will to have sex with them behind closed doors. Okay. But religion is important. Okay. So going on, that there are striking similarities to the church's failure to protect these children from abuse, and that this next generation's reckoning will be about the failure in their ranks to protect women from domestic violence. The 12-month ABC News and 730 investigation involving dozens of interviews with survivors of domestic violence, counselors, priests, psychologists, and researchers, and a range of Christian denominations that go on. We have the Catholic, Anglican, the Baptist, which is Black folks should know about that, because we have a lot of Black Baptists and Pentecostals and the Latino. You know about the Catholic Church and the Presbyterians and so on and so forth. And now we got these other little rogue religions that are real pro-Black religions, where you got to submit to the male because he's a Black man, and he's got, he's a Black man and he's leading society. And where have they led all the Black people right now? Everybody's fighting. Nobody knows what they want to do. They hate on each other. And we're still back in the same situation we've always been in. So, has discovered the answers to these questions will stun those who believe that the church should protect the abused, not the abusers. Okay. So, I'm not going to read that part. I'm going to jump down. You see these women here. And these are women. It says, a little blurb, I guess it talks about some issues that are going on with Christian men more likely to assault their wives. And so there's more and more on this. And so I'm not going to read the full article. I just wanted to say that a lot of this is perpetuated. It happens on the regular. And so religion is, I believe, the fault of a lot of the reason why women are abused. And nobody talks about it. They pretend that it doesn't exist and they sweep it under the rug. And so what I'm going to do, I'm not even going to leave this article, but if you can just see the title of it, and you can see who, Julia Bayard. This is who, and then also with a Haley Gleason. The illustrations are by Oroko Fazari. And so there are women out there that think that this is okay. You're supposed to accept, you don't have a man. You don't have a man. So, it's something wrong with you because you don't have a man. So that's why, if you are the problem, it's not the man, and you're just sad. You're sad because you're lonely, and I got a man, but he's beating your eyes. He's sleeping with other women. He's giving you diseases. He's not really helping you with the kids. You're paying the bills. You're working. You're cleaning the house, doing all the house chores, and you're bringing in the money. He sits at home and eats up your food faster than the kids do, and then he's out sleeping with other women. Or when you're at work working hard, he's got a woman in the house and he's sleeping with her, different women every week, because he has his pick of the mill. He can do whatever he wants, because see, it's more important to obey these rules up here, because you have to submit to these males no matter what. It doesn't matter if he's abusive. It doesn't matter if he's violent. And some of these women find that some of them think this is a turn on. You're supposed to be turned on by getting the shit kicked out of you. And so women who are speaking out on this issue, it's not nothing wrong with the women who are getting their ass kicked. It's something wrong with the women who refuse to get their ass kicked in these relationships, and to be whipped and abused and made to feel like you have to be a sex slave. And it's not about love, it's about control and power for these males like this. And then you have this go on, and then you have these women who perpetuate this stuff. And then if a woman speaks out on it, she has a problem with you. She's mad at you because you're talking about it. Because, see, she's accepted this as reality in her life, as the other women have dismissed it. They know something's wrong with this. They want to keep their eyesight. They want to keep their ligaments in the sockets. They don't want to be, walking around with gimpy legs and eye patches and shades, because their relationship is more important than their being alive and surviving. And so this is the kind of stuff that people will use to perpetuate this abuse. The very, very thing that I do not like is these crazy ass religions that say that you have to submit to some crazy ass man who doesn't know how to keep his stuff in his pants, and then he can't keep his hands to himself because he's too busy using you as a punching bag. So that's pretty much my take on this. The other stuff that goes down is more like little stories and snippets of experiences, just like the one that I read before. And so when I was panning down this article, usually I read the whole entire article, but this one right here is talking about rape. And we were talking about in that in the Kavanaugh hearings. But he still got selected no matter what, because it's more important to submit to these males, even if they're wrong. I felt that I was almost being raped. Sally met Peter when she was in her mid-30s and had been praying for a husband, because Black women have to pray. Got to get on your knees and pray for the right mate. And how many times have we heard that? So she wasn't instantly attracted to him, but his charm and his wit, by the deluge of flowers and love letters he sent her, she grew to believe that she was meant to be with him. So she overlooked the fact that she had to buy her own engagement ring. Oh, wow. He doesn't have to buy the wedding ring and the engagement ring. You do it. Because you got to submit to these males, because God sent them to you. And agreed to marry him not for long after their meeting. So Peter's personality, it changed on the first day of their honeymoon, when he yelled at her for sleeping in and made plans to go fishing the days without her, because he's got to hang out with his boys, because that's important. So her Bible study leader, which she goes to, because, you got to keep women, got to stay virtuous. We got to stay virtuous to those males. The leader told her later that she looked like the saddest bride he'd ever seen. Oh, poor girl. She's the saddest one. The abuse quickly escalated as Peter drank and he gambled and he demanded sex every night and every second of the night, usually after he was done yelling at her for hours, screaming, because, after all that yelling and beating, you got to have sex. So she later wrote in a statement prepared for court, if I refused, he would become incandescent with rage. Oh, wow. Because some women are turned on by getting their ass kicked, and so you can't speak out about this because something's wrong with you as a woman if you speak out about these issues, because you're alone. You're going to be alone forever. You're going to be an old maid because you refuse to get your ass beat. So it was easier, and I'm adding this in here because that's the thinking that the level of thinking that some of these women have. Even so in the Black community, that if you refuse to be with males like this, there's something wrong with you instead of him. So it was easier to give in and then argue rather than argue. So those nights I felt that I was almost being raped. That's what this woman is saying. Once he forced her to have sex just 3 weeks after giving birth. Wow. And what do they tell you in the hospital after you give birth to a baby, that you have to be careful because you can get pregnant all over again? Oh boy, nobody's talking about that, are they? Sally found little comfort in her Pentecostal church. which is supposed to be a place of refuge and counsel, and it's supposed to be able to work out all of your problems because religion is key. So which she had turned to repeatedly for help, because counselors are simply advised her to forgive him. You gotta forgive getting your ass beat, forgive when he cheats on you and gives you HIV, or he gives you, he makes you pregnant, he doesn't want to help you raise the kids. Forgive him, because forgiving is for you. Forgiving is for you. Okay? So she told him that her pastor and her story, but no one followed it up. Why? I wonder why. The violence mounted until one day her husband threw their 3-year-old daughter across the room after the toddler accidentally bumped his leg. Wow, he's such a loving father. He's so loving. And so that's what Black women have to submit. See, they're not giving in to these men. That's the problem out there. We don't have enough Black women that'll submit to men like this. And so when she then left Peter, Sally also left the church parish. I have to give her a hands up, thumbs up, because I would have done the same thing. So feeling isolated and unwanted as a single mother, oh wow, now here comes the sob story. We're alone, we don't have a man because we refuse to take the abuse and the ass beatings. So 10 years later, she is still shattered. She wishes she had heard just one sermon on domestic violence or had one supportive ear. Wow. So what do you think about that? I just want to say to you that a lot of times the reason why this stuff has been perpetuated is because the very thing that helps is the catalyst to all of this is these religions. And so that's why I'm bringing this about, because see, it's easy to blame just these males, but they got to have something that motivates them to do this. And so here you go. Here you go. That's why in the church, the pastor has all the males speak. And then if he has the women speak, they got to be women that are accepting of this. And so he'll only have the women that speak so they can tell other women to be submissive. Because, see, the women won't listen to the men because, see, we're in the Me Too movement and this is a new generation. We gotta convince them that it's okay to submit to your husbands and the men. So how do we do this? Let's not use other men to say this sermon. Let's use our wives, the ones that we have submit to us. And what better way to send a message is use another woman to deliver your dirty messages of accepting this abuse. With that being said, I'm going to let this go. Thanks for listening.